My name's Scott. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, everybody. It's kind of like being buried by a priest you never met, you know? Just come. We know you didn't know him, but come anyway and say what you usually say. And it'll be just trying to bury the guy. What time do you want me to talk till?
Until you're done.
Till I'm done. Can I see the hands of people in their first year? Could you raise your hand if you're here in your first year? Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're anything like me, you're probably looking around the room and saying to yourself, Alcoholics Anonymous. How did I wind up in Alcoholics Anonymous? Alcoholics Anonymous. This is beyond lame. This is beyond church, beyond synagogue. This is a plateau of lameness I never even imagined was available to me. Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome. You're with the lames now, man. The pros, you know. And you're now privy to an unending reservoir of unsolicited information and advice. They're going to talk some long stuff to you. I'd like to thank the committee for flying us to Colorado from our home in Sherman, California. I'd like to thank Lucinda for taking good care of us and picking us up at the airport. And I'd like to thank our leader for not giving me a introduction that I have to work all night to overcome. And I want to tell you, I've already had a great time. I had a great dinner and got to hang out with the guys in Nebraska and got to meet Lloyd and his wife. And boy, it was great for me. That's the kind of fellowship you find at conventions. It's a rare thing when people come together from all over. You want to talk about people who would not normally mix. I mean, geez. Man, we got Jews, we got Native Americans, we got Catholics at the table. It's, you know, it was it really was a remarkable table full of people, man. And I'd like to thank you for the biggest gift that you gave me, and it really is the biggest gift, and that's an opportunity to hear my wife share. And I'd really like to thank her for sharing tonight. And I don't get to hear her share enough, and when I do, it's really it's a big deal for me. And it's kind of a crapshoot because you never really know what she's going to say, and I'm a sitting duck, man, you know, and but I adore her, and I used to think she was the source of pretty much everything that was wrong with the world. And I used to wake up and look at her asleep, and I swear to you, man, I'd watch her breathing, and I'd think, how can I just kill this woman and get away with it? You know that kind of thing when you're in that state, strong wind comes along while you're driving, you think, maybe the wind would pick the car up and drop it into the house and kill Nancy. You know, everything you hear on the news, you think, maybe she was involved. You know, it's just the way it comes out. But that's what happens when you've rearranged your entire life to accommodate alcoholism, and you get to put it all on another human being. Actually, it wasn't. My problems were so vast and so complex that not even my wife could be the sole cause of them all. You really had to bear a lot of the brunt of it, and certainly a lot of the blame. In my horrible, horrible journey to Alcoholics Anonymous, which took me quite a long time. If you're new here and you're bored, imagine my shock that you'd be bored. Let me tell you my favorite bored story in AA. It's just my favorite story. A guy in my home group, a guy who's been sober a long, long time now, when he was new, he was at a meeting and he was shifting around in his seat. His name's Jeff D. And his sponsor said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I'm bored." And his sponsor said, "Well, you know why you're bored?" He said, "No." He said, "You're bored because you're boring. That's why you're bored." And for Jeff, it was an acid moment. You know, he went, "Wow, man, man, it was like cool. You know, it was a cool thing to say." And he always wanted a newcomer to tell him that they were bored. You know, he'd walk up to newcomer and say, "Are you know?" Try to get him to say. Anyway, 13 years later, he's 13 years sober. He's at a meeting, a young lady sitting in front of him, he knows she's new, she's shifting around in her seat. He says, "What's the matter?" She says, "I'm bored." He says, "Well, you know why you're bored." She says, "Yeah, 'cause I'm with you." And it's been a pleasure meeting Reggie and hanging out with Reggie. I made another friend this weekend. If you're new here, I just want to tell you, this is for me. You're going to be hearing like what it's like for me tonight. Let me just say generally, this is what it's like for me. Please don't take my program as an indictment of your program. You know, my mind-reading skills are as sharp as my wife's, I like to believe. And I like to believe that when a guy shares something in this program that I don't do, that he automatically thinks I'm a defective moron who doesn't know how to work a program. No, he's just sharing how it's worked for him. He's found a higher power of his understanding. I found a higher power of my understanding, and we're certainly not going to take the exact same route to two different higher powers, which are going to bring about a personality change sufficient enough to save our life. And for me, I don't care what you took. I don't care. If you're special, if you're a drug addict, that's fine. You can be anything you want to be. Just catch alcoholism. That's all you have to do. My sponsor said to me out of the gate, he said, Scott, I'm going to clear it up for you because I didn't know. Am I a junkie? Am I a... What? He said, I'm going to tell you the difference between an alcoholic and a drug addict. Right now, we're going to clear it up and drop it. He said, an alcoholic will steal your money, go downtown, get drunk, spend it all, come back full of self-pity, cry and weep and tell you what he did. He said, a drug addict will steal all your money, go downtown, get loaded with the money, come back, and help you look for the money. Now, I had done both. So I knew that I qualified. And I was not an alcoholic when I came here. If you're new, they're going to tell you can't catch this illness. They lie to you. I did not have alcoholism when I got here. I have a miserable case of it today. You gave it to me. I caught it from you. I caught it in these rooms. I was not an alcoholic when I got here. I was Jewish. There no Jews don't drink because it might dull the pain. And of course, I'm sure there's a myriad of religions out here who are applying the same principle as I speak. But I couldn't be an alcoholic because I was Jewish, and not only was I Jewish, I was artistic. I was not an artist. I was not an alcoholic. I was an artist. And in addition to that, I had been in psychotherapy for 18 years, and I was on the brink of being a very well-analyzed corpse by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I was not an alcoholic. I was a artistic Jewish patient, I guess, something like that. But I didn't have alcoholism. Didn't have it. And my sponsor, he suggested, he basically told me that it's a three-pronged disease. It's a physical disease, a mental disease, and a spiritual illness. And he said, Scott, if you want to find out about this physical aspect of our disease, I suggest you go to the doctor's opinion in our book and give it a read. If you're new here and you haven't read it yet, you got a great treat ahead of you. I urge you to go to that section of our book. And it's about a guy who's not an alcoholic. It's written by a guy who's not a drunk, you know. And he talks about a class of people in whom a phenomenon of craving exists. If you're an alcoholic and you're here and your life has been running out between your fingers like a handful of water over and over again, he talks about people who drink because they have to overcome a craving that they cannot control. They are a class apart from normal people. They are people whose problems pile up at a seemingly unsolvable rate, and they are crushed under the weight of it because they cannot solve them with their own tools. You know. And in this section, he says, you might ask yourself, why would I do this? I'm the administrator of one of the most prestigious institutions for the treatment of alcoholism and drug addiction in the United States. I'm not an alcoholic. This is an altruistic spiritual program I do not make $1 on. Why would I possibly sponsor this? And then he says something that has affected me in my sobriety as much as anything in our book. He says, come work with me. Come be with me. Come see the warped lives, the destroyed children, the mangled marriages. Come hear the sound of a man who wants to stop drinking and who cannot. And then he says, for me, the most remarkable thing. He says, let it become part of your waking hours and your sleeping hours. He was dreaming about it. And then you won't ask me anymore. You won't ask me why I'm doing this anymore. You'll know exactly why I've done this. You'll see the demonstration of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to thank all the speakers who have spoken before me. They are the demonstration of Alcoholics Anonymous. All those stories are. And Then he said, if you want to take a look at some of this alcoholic thinking you hear so much about at these meetings, you want to take a look, might want to take a look at the second and third chapters of our book. One of the greatest examples of alcoholic thinking I've ever heard was in my home group. A guy shared that he had just been dragged out of his car by the cops. He was loaded, and they chained him to the bench in the police station. He had just urinated on himself. And he looked at the cop and he said, I got to stop driving. When the drink in your hand has no connection to the condition of your life, you are in serious trouble, man. That is fatal alcoholic denial, and you'll die. And the thinking is so beautifully covered in that second and third chapter. If you're new here, you know, and you've been getting drunk at exactly the wrong time, if you fail to recall with sufficient force the memory of the pain and humiliation of a day, a week, a second ago, and to repeat the same insane behavior over and over again, if you build up a bright outlook for yourself and your family and rip it down around your ears in a senseless series of sprees, if you get excited when you're told you need dental surgery, that doesn't get a laugh at the Lions Club, folks. No one at the Lions Club goes, dental surgery. You could have alcoholism. Now, if you don't have alcoholism, what is wrong with you? What's your problem? If your brain works that way, we know what dental surgery means. It means an uninterrupted source of triple script drugs for a period of time. Normal people don't get excited when they're told they need dental surgery. They don't get a little shot of adrenaline. I did. And it beautifully covers it. And my sponsor explained to me, he said, Scott, if you're in that class of people who experience this phenomenon of craving, and this kind of thinking takes a hold on you after a period of time, they mix together and they create a cancer of the soul that once you are in the grip of it, you're gone. You're beyond human help. Always good news for the new man. Beyond human help. And this soul sickness is beautifully described in our fourth chapter. You know, there's a beautiful, in We Agnostics, one of my favorite sections of it. It says, it's right after the debate of, is there a God, is there not a God? Well, there's not a God. How could there be a God with all this terrible stuff going on? Then it says, oh, but a starry night arose. There is a God. And then, like, further on the page, they go, okay, you have no life. You're of no use to anybody. You can't make a living. You're an idiot. Don't you think the solving of these problems is a little more important than this discussion? Could we just lay this discussion aside for a little bit and try to dig our heels in here and maybe get better for this soul sickness that's killing you and killing everyone around you? You know, when I came in here, you guys told me I wasn't bad getting good. I was sick getting well, and I appreciated that. But I will tell you this. I might not have been a bad guy, but I did a hell of a good imitation of one. And I felt like a bad guy. And I'll tell you why. I acted like a bad guy. And one thing that was extremely important to me was to start feeling like a good guy in sobriety. Was to start doing, and you know how I felt that way? I started doing good things. And it really made me feel good, you know. And that's the kind of sobriety that I gravitated to when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And then my sponsor said, we're in luck, because after it describes the physical and the mental and the spiritual, then it says how it works, and it's going to give us clear-cut instructions on how to proceed and get well from something you didn't even know you had. And it's a strange illness. New people, if you don't catch it, you die from it, and if you catch it, you get better. Can't get rid of something you don't have. You know, and if you're new here, I hope you're out of plans. If you have a plan, it's probably a beaut. Don't use the plan. Don't use the plan. Grab one of us after this meeting and tell us the plan. We want to know the plan. But don't use the plan. I had a plan. But, you know, that's the book I've always wanted to see, the collection of newcomer plans. I've always... I've always wanted to see that book. Man. I was brought up in the Bronx in New York City to a completely insane family. They were completely out of their minds. My wife never believed me about them until she met them. And my mom threw an engagement party for us, and my aunt came and wore her wig backwards, and it had a bun on it. And it wasn't a mistake. It was a look she was going after. You know, it wasn't. It sort of had a natty feel. She even, like, you know, put it a little this way, like kind of like a beret kind of feel. Completely out of their minds. If you got something for free in my family mail, it was stolen. And that woman was married to a guy who was a welder, and he used to get these free bales of steel wool. So my Aunt Rose, this woman, took a decorating course and made throw pillows, filled them all with the steel wool. Now, after a while, that stuff works its way through on you. So you go over to their house, and everybody be moving a little bit. There'd be a little bit of movement in the room, a little bit of English, you know. Just so you don't think much has changed, my mom called me the other day, a couple of weeks ago, said, "I want to tell you your Uncle Izzy's dead." And I went, "Oh, no, Ma. It's her brother-in-law." I said, "When did it happen?" She said, "A year ago." I said, "Mom, what are you talking about?" She said, "Well, you know, your Aunt Phyllis has been in the mental institution, and she calls me and harasses me, but Phyllis died a couple of weeks ago, so I've been picking up the phone again, you know." And my family, and if you're new here, all I've got is good news. My family did not have one single solitary thing to do with making me an alcoholic. I'm not saying they didn't screw me up. I'm not saying they didn't have a hard time. I'm not saying there's not a lot of stuff I need to clean up, but no amount of any work on that stuff will allow me to drink properly. Many people have difficult wives and families. They don't shoot a quarter grain of heroin in their hip when they get anxious. I do. And and for the rest of my life, I'll be having to go to parties and saying, no heroin for me, I'll have a Perrier. I'll have to do that for the rest of my life, no matter, and again, I'm not saying the damage wasn't done, but no repair of that damage will allow me to not be an alcoholic anymore. And it was good news for me because I was in therapy and I was dying. I was doing great work in therapy. I was going to be dead with no Oedipal conflict. Very dead, very healthy, very dead. And I am not putting down therapy. Our book on page 133 says if you need a doctor, go get one. Not a lot of, that's not real hazy as a statement, no, right? It's pretty clear. You might want to see one who understands alcoholism, kind of like going to a doctor with a broken leg and having him say, yeah, I've always wanted to see one of those. What the heck do you do with it? So I was brought up in this insane family, and I started drinking, and I overcame my alcohol problem with marijuana, and I kicked marijuana with pills, and I triumphed over my pill problem with heroin, and I was victorious over heroin with cocaine. And cocaine's a good drug. It's good for sex if you enjoy sex from the Neolithic period. Sort of just turned me into a penis delivery system, you know? Great drug. And then I drank till I didn't want to be a drunk. I was never an alcoholic. And I met this woman, man. I met this woman. Remarkable woman. She was just different. I was in this Broadway play, and she was an usherette in the theater, and I took one look at her, and the earth opened up underneath me, and I just adored her. And if you took everything I did in 8 years of marriage and wrote it down in a book and gave it to this woman, and she read it, and you'd say, would you live with this? She'd say, no, I won't live with this. But you spread it out over 8 years. Throw in chronic success. And by the time I got sober, I had been in a Broadway play. I had directed a movie. I had directed a TV show. I had my own theater in New York. I had a book on the bestseller list. I had done all of these things a time. I never got to do them more than once because when I'd leave, they'd move the business so I couldn't find it again. And the reason why, you see, when I took the picture of my disease, and newcomers, we have a picture of alcoholism. It's called an inventory. It's the alcoholic test. Everyone passes. All you have to do is do it. But it's the only test we have. We don't have blood test. We don't have a litmus test. You just take and you get to see the whole thing. Sometimes guys I sponsor, they work on it a little bit, and they say, "Can I come over and read it a little bit?" And I go, try to come over with the whole thing. And then you're going to have to read it and look at the mess. Look at the whole. I'm resentful at them. I'm resentful at me for resenting them. I'm resentful at them for watching me resent them. And I've had sex with all of them, right? What have I done? Look at this life. Look at this shambles, this wreck. And if you can humble yourself in front of another man, and you might just be so crushed under the weight of it, so deflated of ego at depth, talk about the first step. That's when I took I had to take first three before I did my fourth. But I took them on a primitive level compared to how you want to talk about unmanageability. Look at my inventory. Look at the roadmap of unmanageability. For me, I took the first three steps pretty primitively compared to how I have taken them, the depth I've been able to take them on. The 10th step has been an incredible. And the 11th step, what a marvelous way to practice step one. Because I'm depending on something else, and I'm seeing the kind of little messes I create on the road, and how I want to stay unblocked. So, this woman and I married, and we became very ill together. Some people are attracted to damaged people. I've always been attracted to healthy people, and then I screw them up. And my impression, although I didn't know Nancy's sordid past at the time, was that she became very ill from prolonged exposure to me. And we became pretty sick. A guy lent us his car, and we sold the car. We sold the car. I'll never forget this guy's voice on the phone. "You sold my car?" That's like house sitting for somebody, and they come back and you're in escrow, right? And you're proud of it, You did it. Our alcoholic life had become the normal life. We were proud of ourselves. We're going to stop acting like kids. We're going to stop borrowing money. We're going to sell the car. We sold this guy's car. When I called him up years later to make amends, his voice hadn't changed. "You're paying me back?" It was like he was frozen at the end of the phone for 15 years, I came home one day and popped the cork on a bottle of wine. We had these 32-ounce tumblers. I poured the entire bottle into the tumbler. And I turned around and I'm getting the rat face. That. I said, "What?" She said, What are you doing?" And completely seriously, I said, "I'm having a glass of wine." Can't a man have a glass of wine in his own home? Outrageous. When I finally got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was out of plans, and my wife was terribly ill, and my children were broken up, our oldest son was kind of was making involuntary clicking noises with his throat that he couldn't stop making. He was writing and reading years below his grade level. He had to go to special ed teacher. He was his small motor stuff was just a mess. Fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble, and how horribly true for the young people who are exposed to alcoholism, because nothing ever winds up the way it's supposed to wind up, no matter what I say. Because if you get in between me and the drink, I'm going to walk through you or I'm going to walk around you, no matter how much I love you, no matter how important that you are to me. I am going to have to take a drink somewhere down the line. It might not be today and it might not be tomorrow, but somewhere along the line, you're going to become transparent. And how long can a kid live when the first man that he knows in his life makes him transparent all the time? How can that child feel like they are of any substance when they keep disappearing? It's horrifying. This disease eats alcoholics up from the inside like a tapeworm and leaves them hollow and alone. It's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible illness. And I was 6 months sober. I had worked step nun. And had gotten the gift of step nun. I was suffering from untreated alcoholism, which I didn't know. Didn't even know I had alcoholism. Untreated alcoholism is a beast. It is an ugly, ugly thing. Particularly unattractive, I find, in people who are not drinking. You can pick them out at the meetings. They usually have a vein pumping like a garden hose on their forehead. You can count all the tendons in their neck, and they leave a trail of light when they walk. You know, they're like radioactive. You know, they're a happy lot. And the deal is the guys who are drinking are treating their alcoholism. That's a treatment, and it works, man. It works. It kills you, but it works. The only other treatment I know of for me, and I know there are other treatments, the only one I know of for me is the program of action outlined in our book. And people who are not using either, man, it is an ugly thing, you know. But newcomers, please read the big book, because then you'll hear people share, and you'll be able to say, oh, he's talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. He's not talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know, but God bless him. He should live and be well. Now, some people, and you hear this a lot, and it works for some people I know, they say, you know, if you don't like him, you pray for him. And my prayer was always, help this man. Father, please help him. Kill this miserable son of a bitch. Kill him. It'll be good for him. He needs killing, and it'll be good for me. So my sponsor said, stop praying for people. If you can't interrupt that prayer in the middle, stop it. So he had me do something else. And that afternoon I went to that man's house. Got such a stiff neck tonight. And he addressed every problem I have ever had, every problem I will ever have. He addressed that afternoon in his house. He didn't solve them. He addressed them. He addressed my hatred of myself, my hatred of you, my unsolvable fears, and my overwhelming sexual problems. All there, all that afternoon. Now, I know this is true for certain people. They say, mostly I resented myself. Well, I hated you much more than I hated me. I'm not a suicide guy. I'm a homicide guy. I respect the suicide people. I got no beef with them at all. I vastly prefer your death to mine. I always have, and if I kill all you, there'll be no reason to kill myself. But I think it's kind of like the two sides of the same coin. There you got your suicide people, you got your homicide people. I'm a homicide guy. That's just the way I've been. So I had no problem. One of my favorite things that reminds me of a talk I was having this afternoon is when a guy comes over and said, I really have no resentments. Which is kind of like having a great poker hand and making sure all you got to make sure is that your hand doesn't shake when you reach for the chips, because then you get to ask the guy the questions. You get to ask him, so you loved everyone in elementary school. You adore everyone in your family. You're a friend of the clergy. You loved everyone in the military. And then the cracks. The guy usually leaves. He's a seething cauldron of venom by the time he leaves the house, And I did that fourth step, and there was a tremendous amount on that fourth step about my wife, my tremendous resentments against her, my tremendous resentments against myself for how I had treated her, my tremendous resentments against myself for how I had comported myself in the marriage, my tremendous resentments against myself for what I perceived as being unsolvable damage to my children. And I hated Nancy. I just hated her. And my sponsor suggested that I really shut up, that I really tell him everything and just leave her alone. Just leave her alone. Just stay away from her. Leave the boys alone. Just stay away from them. She's horrible, he'd say. We all know she's the worst human being who ever lived. Come on over. Let's go to a meeting. Let's go help. I got a puker. Come on, let's go. Let's go do this stuff. And I go over and I wanted what my sponsor had, and then I found out how he got it, Oh, man, it was endless, absolutely endless. This guy never said no to anybody. He sponsored all of California, It was ridiculous, And he just, I didn't need tough love when I got here. And some people do. I know I didn't need your help being mean to me. at all. You couldn't do me like I did me anyway. You'd need a full-time staff. Shut up, sit down, you're an idiot. Okay, it feels like home. Is there anything new here? I just didn't. When he said shut up to me, he did it in a very kind and loving way. And he said he never disagreed with anything I said. He said, yes, you're right, she's horrible, the kids are out of their minds, you're noble, you have a disease. Dude, and I want to tell you, man, things really, really started changing for me. My wife and my children were on my 8-step list. I'll give you my favorite reading of the 8-step. It's just the best, and if you're new here, I want to do this for you. It's the best reading I've ever seen. It was at my home group, and it was given by a guy who had never read Chapter 5 before. He'd never seen the steps before. His name was Nino. He was there with a hospital group. He had a hospital bracelet on, had a heavy New York accent. Never seen him since. He was reading Chapter 5, and he got up to Step 8. And he read, made a list of all those we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Jesus Christ! Oh, God. And he looked out as if to say, have you seen this? Do you know what's in here, man? Oh. Because when I was new, that's all I saw. That's the only step I saw. I went, no, not that money. I wouldn't have taken that much money. No, man. Not the car. And I did that 8-step list. And you know, if you're new, you don't have to worry about the 8-step. It's 8 steps from where you are, for God's sake. And it's not 8 you got to worry about. 9's going to get you. So. I made my 8-step list, and Nancy and the boys were on the list. And I swear I don't judge a person. It's just this is for me. I said to Don, because I had heard it at meetings, shouldn't I put myself at the top of the list? And he said, sure. You've never done anything for yourself in this life, have you? Yeah, you really owe a lot to Scott Redmond. I'm telling you, you've really overlooked his needs for everyone else's. Cross everybody else out. Just put yourself there. He said, if you're on the list, make sure you're way down there, buddy. That was just for me. I didn't wind up on the list because the fact is the more I work the 9th step, the more gifts I got. I need more than the promises. Thank you for the promises, Father. Can you throw some transportation in? It's insane. I'll know a new peace, a new freedom. I'll know serenity. Right? I'll be able to deal with situations that used to baffle me. And a hamburger, please. I mean, what do you need? I need to be on the list. What do I need to do for myself? That's just for me. That's just for me. One thing was really clear to me. The idea of sitting down with my wife and children and saying, I'm sorry, was so ludicrous, so laughable. Were they going to lean across the table and go, by gum, Dad, you're forgiven? We're dying. We're here, we're dying. We've lived in hell all these years. God, this must have taken a lot for you to sit down and say you're sorry to us. I'm sorry were the 2 most useless words in my house. They had been the 2 most abused, most useless. That was, there was a great cartoon about Hollywood some while ago, and I totally identified with it as an alcoholic. It shows these 2 guys in a Hollywood bar, and one of them's turned to the other and he's saying, you're lying to me. And the other guy's saying to him, yeah, I am, but hear me out. Huh? If that's not alcoholism, man, wow. So what started to happen was I started to coach football teams and coach basketball teams and show up for Little League games and show up for school plays and help my kids when they asked me to and hang out with them and go skiing with them. And 8.5 years ago when I reached across my table, my children flinched when my arm came near them. And my kids wound up trying to fight with each other to who would be the guy to go up the ski lift with me. That's because of you. That's what you did to me. That's what you did for me. My wife and I don't work on our relationship. She was talking about that. My idea of working on a relationship was to talk to you until you change your mind. You know, until your eyes roll back in your head and you keel over, you know. On the way down you go, okay. Oh. And for our first bunch of years in sobriety, our marriage, we weren't, you know, we were working on turning our will and our life over to the will over the care of God. And we were celibate for more than a year in our marriage. We stayed away from each other. You know, when I said I was going to a meeting, she went, hasta luego, you know. And when she went to a meeting, I went, hasta luego. And the boys just kept looking. It's an incredible thing. My older son shared this with me a while ago. I'd never even known it. When I started sponsoring men while I was very young in sobriety, and my sponsor just made me say that I would not tell a man to work a step I had not worked, and would not tell a man to do things I had not done before. And I started sponsoring guys at 10 months of sobriety. And I had already worked through my steps my first time around, and I had heard Sybil talk. She's been sober over 45 years, and that's her message, is if you got a car and a quarter, give a guy a ride and lend him a dime. You know? And this one guy, and you know, maybe that alarms certain people, but this is the result. Is number one, I still sponsor the guy. Number two, this guy used to call me every night just to leave a message on the machine. And my son, who had a very hard time sleeping because he was so scared, once he would hear Roland's voice on the tape, he'd be able to fall asleep. Because he would know. It had nothing to do with me saying, with me promising, with me saying I'm sorry. He saw the demonstration of Alcoholics Anonymous. He heard Roland call me to say, I am sober, I love you. He knew that a drunken man would not get that call. That's the demonstration of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new here, you're going to hear a lot of deranged stuff about alcoholism. My favorite deranged statement, you'll hear it from people outside of the program, is, geez, you know, isn't Alcoholics Anonymous just another crutch? It's kind of like saying to a diabetic, boy, you know, you're really leaning on that insulin stuff a little too hard. A little weak there, huh, bud? It's a pretty deranged thing to say about Alcoholics Anonymous. So what started happening for me, the way I see what happened to our family, is Nancy and I learned how to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. And He gave us back two people who loved each other. And we're having a remarkably successful partnership and a remarkably successful enterprise in Alcoholics Anonymous. The boys they found an entire class of grown-up who's terrified of them, which are the new guys I bring to the house. And some years ago, I brought a new guy over, and then Jesse walked up to him. Jesse was about 8 at the time. He said, "What step you on, pal?" The guy said, four, I'm doing my fourth. I said, he's 8 years old, you. This is so great. Nancy, this is the kind of stuff that starts happening in a sober home. Nancy's walking through our room, and I'm on the phone. All she hears me say is this: "Okay, let's say the aliens are coming to get you." I'm an AA. I got no. That's an outside enterprise. I'm not saying the aliens are coming. I got one question for you, buddy. Why are they coming for you? You've got no life. You live in North Hollywood. They've traversed a universe for you? I don't think so. It's a newcomer sleeping with a Bible on his forehead, so the aliens aren't going to get him. I said, oh yeah, and they're going to traverse a universe, walk into your room and go, oh no, the Bible's on his forehead. Let's go back to Remulac, right? Oh, man. One of the guys I sponsor, and I was explaining this to Jesse, and he was real small. One of the guys I sponsor had, just before he got sober, he got drunk, drove 11 miles the wrong direction on the freeway off a 100-foot bridge. And I said to Jesse, he was declared dead at the scene. And Jesse said, yeah, and dumb. It's a tough room, folks. It's a tough room, my house. I'm resentful at Nancy for calling me a slob. It affects my self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, and sex. Tells me I didn't do the dishes enough. This is a couple of years ago. It's a 5-bagger for sure. What do I ask God to remove? This is my 10th step. Well, I could ask him to remove her. The dishes. I'm sure he'd be interested in that. Well, let's see. Today we'll keep Saturn on its axis and do the dishes for Scott. I don't think so. Or I could ask him to remove me. No. What am I going to ask him to take away? What is it in me? What is the poison in me that if God would remove, the resentment would be gone? I wouldn't be blocked from him, and I wouldn't start to freeze my wife out and start to punish her and start to do all the stuff that I start to do when I'm in resentment, when I'm myself. Well, first defect of character is I'm a slob. I'm sloppy. No, don't argue with me. I'm sloppy. I'm stubborn. I have false pride. I'm not trusting in God. If I trust in God, I know everything was okay. I'm playing God. Things aren't going to according to the Scott Redmond program. And I'm unwilling to accept the fact that Nancy Geller is another child of God who could be spiritually sick like me, because she's not just saying, Jesus, it would be very helpful to me if some of the dishes got done. She's saying, you're a pig, and I wish you'd do the dishes. So she did it to me in a way that hurt my feelings. So I am unwilling to accept the fact that Nancy Geller is another child of God who could be spiritually sick like me. Now, clearly, if I'm resentful at her and she's spiritually ill, that's one of my defects. Because if she's ill, then I should be able to give her the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. I wouldn't treat sick friends that way. So I go to God in my 6th and 7th step, and I ask him to remove that. What can I do, Father? Now, but God might, because otherwise I'm just saying, having God run all over town doing stuff for me. What can I do for you? I'll do your work, you do my work. Newcomers, if you want to drink, imagine my shock that a new person would want to drink. You can accept a craving. A craving has a beginning, middle, and an end, but an obsession doesn't. And you can make a deal with God today. All these demonstrations of Alcoholics Anonymous I'm talking about, you can give the greatest demonstration of Alcoholics Anonymous any of us can ever give. You cannot drink till 12 o'clock tonight. And you can get as spiritual as anybody in this room. You can get your hand out to another drunk. That's as spiritual as I will ever get. And from that demonstration, I have been given the tools to have a relationship that makes me feel good, that I am not scared in. Right? In our sexual inventory, it asks us to write about 7 points. Where am I being selfish? Well, I want what I want when I want it. This is in my marriage, right? Where I've been selfish, dishonest. I'm willing to do little things around the house, imitating a useful human being. But what I'm really trying to do is figuring, I think this amount of housework will equal this amount of sex. So selfish. No one's ever done it. Selfish. Get that dustbuster out, boys. Because it'll work once in a while. Once in a while. Where have I been selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? I don't really care how she feels. I want what I want. Where have I been selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? Where have I unjustifiably aroused jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness? Well, she doesn't do it my way. Maybe I'll start looking at other women. Maybe I'll mention another woman that I've liked. Jealousy, suspicion, I can just be a little apart from, be a little cold. Bitterness, I can roll to the other side of the bed, which might be a relief. But it can be a bitterness when that iron door comes down. And then it says, and it's a remarkable thing, what should I have done instead? It doesn't say what could I have done, what could I have done, what I did. What should I have done? In this way, we ask God to help us shape a sound, ideal sex life and walk towards it. I get to be the guy I always wanted to be, which was that good guy. What should I do? I should talk to my wife. I should tell her I'm having a difficult time. That when she does A, B, C, and D, it makes me angry and I start to push away. Can you help me? I'm sick, I need help. Not you're sick and I'm sick and I need help. I suffer from a spiritual malady that once it's mixed with alcohol will kill me for sure. So I just wanted to share with you some of the tools that I've been able to utilize in our marriage. And what's happened to me is horrible stuff. A couple of years ago, we were having a financial difficulty, which we were the only people in America with financial problems. When I'm in self, of course, that's what it is, And my wife sat me down, and she looked at me right in the eyes, and she said, you know what? You're the perfect guy for me. I love you. I love you exactly, perfectly the way you are. I didn't marry a rich guy. I married you. and you're my guy. A couple of weeks ago, I got very angry at my oldest son. And I chewed him out. And it was something that he had done that was dangerous, and I needed to get angry at him. I needed to demonstrate to him that it was very important that he not do it again. And he walked away from me and he slammed his door. So I went into the room, and I was about to chew him out again, and he said, "Dad, don't you tell me I can't get angry. I'm not telling you were wrong inside. You were right." But what he was saying to me is, it's very hard to have a big man scream in your face and not feel humiliated even if you're wrong. Don't tell me I can't get mad. I'm not telling you you're wrong. What's that? Where does that come from? What planet is that? And I could hear it, and I could say, "Micah, you're absolutely right," and turn around and walk out of the room. What is that? What have you guys done to us? What has happened? It's unbelievable. Newcomers, you're going to hear the word miracle. It's going to sicken you. Everybody's a miracle. The furniture's a miracle. The meeting's a miracle. We're all miracles. Well, I want to tell you something. This is a miracle. When you see a person do something, not that they're ill-equipped to do, something they were unequipped to do, that's a miracle. When you see somebody when you see God do for somebody what they cannot do for themselves, unequipped to do, that is a miracle. That is a miracle, and you will see that demonstration over and over and over again in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have an incredible life today. If you're new, I'm sure that thrills the living crap out of you. When I was new, I'd listen to people with a great life, and I go, "Geez, how wonderful. Wouldn't it be terrible if your face burst into flame, Just went up in a column of smoke, but you know what? Somewhere in the back of my mind, with this sick, diseased marriage I had and these sick, crippled children, somewhere in the back of my mind I said, that would be just okay with me. That would be just fine with me." We do have a book, and it's the only text on recovery from a fatal illness that contains the sentence, "We absolutely insist on enjoying life." There is no book about cholera that says, cholera is a hoot. It's a hoot. You'll love cholera. You'll meet other people with cholera. You'll have a fabulous time. Then you'll meet people who just caught cholera. It doesn't get any better than that. If you're new here, we're going to suggest to you that you stop treating your own alcoholism. We have a treatment that works. No one has ever recovered from anything using your treatment. And the numbers are dwindling. We're just asking you to stick around long enough to find out you've got alcoholism. Stick around long enough to catch alcoholism. And we're going to ask you to do the weirdest thing anybody ever asked me to do in my life. When you want to drink, don't. What's that all about? Don't drink. Call one of us, go to a meeting, knock over a 7-Eleven, do whatever you got to do, crawl on your belly, and say, "Father," and I'm just a suggestion, you might want to say, "Father, I will accept this craving if you remove the obsession. I will accept the craving. Every craving has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I'll take the whooping. I'll stand. It's going to happen. It's going to come over me in waves. I'll take the whooping if you'll stop kicking my ass. If you'll let me stick around here long enough so that the ice falls away from my heart and I can have a beautiful wife like Scott Redman." Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome home. Thanks for letting me share tonight.